Saw 4 is definitely the weakest of the first four Saw films. That's not to say I didn't like it at all, but it's definitely not as good as the first three. This was released in 2007. It's directed by Darren Lynn Bousman, and I was really curious about what they do with this one. There will be spoilers in this discussion for the previous three films, but I won't spoil anything that happens in this film. If I do decide to go into some spoiler detail, I will give a spoiler warning, but there will be spoilers for the previous films. And given that Jigsaw, John died in the third film, I was thinking, how on earth are they going to continue this? And I won't say how it continues, but I will say I was curious throughout the film because we learn at the very beginning of the film that there has to be somebody else involved, but who could it possibly be? Is it somebody we know? Is it a new character we're going to meet? And I won't say what was revealed, but I will say I felt a little bit disappointed by the outcome with that part of the narrative. I kind of didn't believe it. But I think I'll discuss that with a spoiler warning in more detail towards the end of this. So the mystery element was interesting. However, it's not very gory. It's not very graphic. And the gory scenes and the torture scenes are so few and far between that there just wasn't anything interesting in this at all. There are a couple of moments that were a bit stomach churning, and the one in particular involved the knives. You'll know which bit I mean, I think, and that I found to be disgusting. But honestly, other than that, I believe it's also the least stomach churning and the least scary of the four films. And I also feel like the narrative was all over the place. Occasionally, when we had flashbacks, particularly to John's past, that was quite interesting. I feel like they didn't need to give that extra layer of his backstory because for me, the whole he has cancer, he doesn't get to enjoy his life, so he's going to punish people who aren't taking their life seriously or who aren't appreciating being alive. I get it, it made sense. Giving it an extra layer and showing us kind of why this kick started, I don't mind it, but I feel like it was unnecessary. And we just didn't need that. We should have moved forward and worked on the narrative chronologically and found out things to be more interesting in the present time rather than going back with information that I personally just didn't find that necessary or that interesting. And I feel like the film was relying too heavily on John's backstory because the actual present day narrative, or present day in the film, was very weak and really dull and kind of underdeveloped and also a little bit all over the place. So as a narrative, it's not good. As a horror film or a thriller film, depending on how you want to categorize it, it's not that good either. It's not that intense. It's not that scary. I didn't really feel sick at any point. And the first three films did make me feel that way, and this one didn't. It's not very powerful at all. And as I said, with regards to how the mystery developed, I felt a little bit not so much disappointed, but I just don't believe it. I don't think it was the right choice. So I guess I'll discuss with a spoiler warning what happened at the end and kind of how I felt about that and how I feel about the next film because I will watch it. Three good films, one weak film. I'm not going to give up yet. I'm hoping to watch all of them. So spoilers, big spoilers for something, for the reveal at the end. And at the end of the film, we learn that the person who has been helping him, his other accomplice, is Hoffman. And I did have that kind of brief, okay, I wasn't expecting that. That's kind of cool. And then I thought, hang on, why? I don't understand the motivation, and I don't really believe that this would make any sense. And I'm going to assume that the next film will answer those questions and plug those gaps. But for me, for a mystery to make sense, there has to be a reason to connect those dots. You have to be able to reflect on either the previous films or the previous events of that film and go, okay, yes, I can see why this would link to this and I can see why this is the conclusion of this film. I don't think any film should rely on a future film to explain things. Not something as significant as this. So I kind of don't feel anything about that ending other than maybe slight disappointment because after I got over the initial shock of not expecting that, I realised it was just really anticlimactic and really boring and, at the moment, unconvincing. I don't really believe any of it. So maybe the next film will change my mind. Hoffman as a character, I think we will learn a lot more about going forward, I assume. I hope. But at the moment, it was just really anticlimactic, and there's not enough information to reflect on the previous events to go, yes, I can see how this mystery led us to this conclusion. So I'll see going forward what happens. But for now, I'm really not that bothered. I will watch the next film, but actually, if the next film ends up being as bad as this film, I'm probably going to at least take a break from the Saw films, maybe give up altogether. If the latest one gets an amazing review or a general reception, I might try again. But we'll see. This is all information for future videos, possibly. But for now, Saw 4 is not a good film, all things considered, and is definitely considerably weaker than the first three films.